Before we begin, viewer discretion is strongly advised. The following is for educational and entertainment purposes only. This is the verbatim federal courtroom testimony of the Sean Diddy Combs trial as reported by Inner City Press. The trial of Sean Diddy Combs had already seen its share of shocking moments from industry executives, cryptic admissions, to emotional testimonies from alleged victims. But on day 23, as the morning session began, the courthouse experienced something unprecedented. Sweeney, the acclaimed actress known for her roles in Euphoria and The White Lotus, entered through a private entrance escorted by federal marshals. The gallery erupted in hushed whispers. Reporters frantically texted their editors. Even Judge Michaela Robertson appeared momentarily taken aback before regaining her composure and calling the court to order. Diddy, who had maintained a stoic facade throughout most of the proceedings, visibly tensed his attorney, leaning in to whisper something that made him shake his head. Sweeney took the stand wearing a simple black blazer over a white blouse, her blonde hair pulled back in a tight bun. Gone was the Hollywood glamour she was known for, replaced by a seriousness that matched the gravity of the moment. As she was sworn in, her voice didn't waver, clear, deliberate, determined. Prosecutor Elena Vasquez approached her demeanor, respectful yet focused. Ms. Sweeney, thank you for being here today. Could you please tell the court how you came to know the defendant, Sean Combs? Sydney adjusted the microphone slightly. I first met Mr. Combs in late 2019 at a pre-Grammy event in Los Angeles. I was still relatively new to Hollywood success and was excited to be invited to industry gatherings. Mr. Combs approached me, said he was a fan of my work, and mentioned potential opportunities. Sweeney, what kind of opportunities did he discuss? Initially, he talked about a potential role in a production his company was developing. He mentioned his connections with various streaming platforms and how he could open doors. As someone still establishing myself in the industry, it sounded promising. Did your interactions continue beyond this initial meeting? Sydney nodded. Yes. About 2 weeks later, I received an invitation to what was described as an exclusive industry mixer at his residence in Los Angeles. The invitation emphasized networking opportunities with executives from major studios and platforms. And did you attend this event? I did. She paused, taking a breath. My agent suggested it would be good for my career. I was told many decision makers would be there. Can you describe what happened when you arrived at this event? Sydney's composure remained intact, though her hands clasped together tightly. When I arrived, the main floor of the mansion was set up like a typical Hollywood party, drinks, music, notable people from the industry. But there was something immediately off about it. In what way? Security was excessive, not just at the entrance, but throughout the house. Everyone's phones were collected upon arrival, which I was told was for privacy reasons. And there seemed to be an unusual division of guests. Could you elaborate on that division? There were older men, mostly executives and industry veterans, and then there were younger women actresses, models, aspiring artists. Very few people in between. The layout of the house seemed designed to funnel specific people to specific areas. The prosecutor nodded thoughtfully. At some point during this event, did Mr. Combs approach you? Yes, about an hour in, he came over while I was speaking with a casting director. He seemed evaluating. He said he wanted to show me something that could change the trajectory of my career. He mentioned having a private screening room where he was showing select guest footage from an upcoming project that needed a female lead. And what happened next? Sydney's expression tightened slightly. He suggested we go downstairs to the screening room. When I asked if the casting director could join, Mr. Combs said it was too preliminary and that he needed my unfiltered reaction first. Did you go with him? I did, but I was uncomfortable. I texted my location to a friend before surrendering my phone. Mr. Combs led me down a staircase, then through what seemed like an unnecessarily complex route through the house. I remember thinking it felt like we were taking a deliberately confusing path. Where did this path lead? Eventually, we reached what looked like an ordinary wall, but Mr. Combs pressed something, and a section slid open, a hidden door. He called it his privacy passage. He laughed when he saw my surprise and said, "In this business, you need escape routes." The courtroom was completely silent now. Diddy maintained his composure, but his attorney was furiously taking notes. What was beyond this hidden door? A corridor that led to several rooms. The lighting was dim with red accent lights along the floor. He guided me to what he called the viewing room. But it wasn't a typical screening room like I was expecting. It was much more intimate, low lighting, a small seating area, and a bar. Were there other people in this room? No, it was empty. He said the others had moved on to the next preview. That's when I started to feel genuinely alarmed. What happened in this room, Ms. Sweeney? Sydney took another steadying breath. Mr. Combs offered me a drink which I declined. He insisted, saying it was special champagne he only shared with future stars. When I declined again, his demeanor changed. Not overtly hostile, but the friendliness felt strained. He started talking about how Hollywood really works, his exact words. He said everyone who becomes successful in this industry understands the exchange system. When I asked what he meant, he began showing me videos on a screen that emerged from a cabinet. Can you tell the court what was on these videos? Sydney looked down momentarily. They were recordings of other actresses and female artists in compromising situations. Some appeared to be in that same room. Some seemed impaired or unaware they were being recorded. Mr. Combs told me these women were now some of the biggest names in entertainment. He implied that their compliance in these situations had secured their success. How did you respond? I told him I needed to use the restroom. It was the only excuse I could think of to leave the room. He pointed me to a door, but when I went through it, it wasn't a bathroom. It led to another corridor with more doors. What did you find there? I heard voices from behind some of the doors. In my attempt to find an exit, I opened one, thinking it might lead out. Instead, I saw... Sydney paused, composing herself. I saw what appeared to be another recording session in progress. There were cameras and people who didn't seem to be fully conscious. Security spotted me immediately and escorted me out back to Mr. Combs. What happened when you returned to where Mr. Combs was? He wasn't pleased. He said I had wandered into the wrong production set. His tone was still calm, but there was an undercurrent of threat. He told me that what I had seen was just how the industry operates at the highest levels, and that discretion is the price of admission. Did he explicitly threaten you, Miss Sweeney? Not with physical harm, no. But he made it very clear that my future in the industry could be determined by my cooperation. Moinam, he said, and I remember this exactly. Everyone has a choice, but not everyone has a career afterwards. How did you leave the situation? I pretended to be considering his offer, said I needed time to think. He seemed satisfied with that and escorted me back to the main party through a different route, avoiding the area I had accidentally accessed. Before returning my phone, he reminded me that NDAs are legally binding and that phones can be hacked, careers can be ruined. Did you report this incident to anyone? Not immediately. I was terrified. Mr. Combs made it clear he had connections everywhere in the industry. But I did document everything I could remember that night in an encrypted note on my computer. What happened after this event? Sydney's voice remained steady, but her eyes reflected her emotional state. For weeks afterward, I received texts from unknown numbers with cryptic messages like, waiting for your decision, and opportunities don't last forever. Then projects I was in consideration for suddenly went to others. A director who had previously been enthusiastic about working with me suddenly wouldn't return my calls. Did you ever have direct contact with Mr. Combs again? Yes, at an industry event about 2 months later. He approached me as if nothing unusual had happened, asked if I'd thought about his offer. When I said I wasn't interested, he laughed and said, "You'll learn how this works eventually." Within a week, blind items appeared on gossip sites about my difficult behavior on sets. Jobs became harder to secure. Ms. Sweeney, why are you testifying today? Sydney looked directly at the jury. When I saw the courage of others coming forward, I knew I couldn't remain silent. What I experienced was minor compared to what others have testified to, but it's part of the same system, a system of coercion, exploitation, and silence. I realized that my career, while important to me, isn't worth the cost of allowing this to continue happening to others. As the prosecutor concluded her questioning, defense attorney James Mendelson approached the stand. Tall and imposing with decades of experience defending high-profile clients, he adjusted his glasses deliberately. Mrs. Sweeney, You've had an impressive rise in Hollywood over the past few years, wouldn't you agree? I've been fortunate in my career, yes. In fact, despite this alleged blacklisting, you're suggesting my client orchestrated, you've secured major roles and commercial success, correct? I worked extremely hard to overcome the obstacles placed in my path, and I was fortunate to connect with directors and producers who valued talent over politics. So there was no actual damage to your career? Sydney's eyes narrowed slightly. There was a period of significant struggle directly after I refused Mr. Combs' proposition. Projects disappeared, but I fought through it. Ms. Sweeney, isn't it true that Hollywood is notoriously competitive and roles frequently go to different actresses for countless reasons unrelated to Mr. Combs? Of course the industry is competitive, but when multiple opportunities vanish simultaneously immediately after refusing someone's advances, the pattern becomes clear. Mendelsohn changed tactics. You mentioned tunnels and hidden passages. Do you have any evidence these were used for nefarious purposes rather than simply being architectural features of a celebrity home concerned with privacy and security? I can only testify to what I personally witnessed and experienced in those areas. And these alleged recordings you claim to have seen, you have no proof they exist, correct? You didn't take any photos or secure any evidence. My phone had been confiscated as I testified, and I was more concerned with finding a way out safely than documenting my surroundings. Ms. Sweeney, Mendelsohn's tone grew more pointed. Have you ever had disagreements with my client about professional matters? Perhaps a role you didn't get or a project that didn't move forward? No, our only interactions were what I've described today. Are you aware that my client has denied any inappropriate behavior toward you or anyone else? I'm here to testify to my experience, not to what Mr. Combs claims. Mendelsohn paused, assessing his approach. You mentioned you documented your experience in an encrypted note. Why encrypted if this was simply a truthful account? Because I was afraid. Mr. Combs made it clear he had extensive reach within the industry and that speaking out could have consequences. And yet here you are speaking out, with your career intact and thriving. Sydney looked directly at him. Yes, here I am, because at some point the cost of silence becomes greater than the cost of speaking the truth. As Sydney Sweeney left the witness stand, the courtroom remained silent. Her testimony had painted a picture not just of one isolated incident, but of a system, hidden rooms and passages, serving as both literal and metaphorical representations of the industry's darkest corners. Outside the courthouse, media outlets exploded with headlines. Within hours, 3 other actresses came forward with similar stories, citing Sydney's courage as their inspiration. Studio executives issued carefully worded statements about taking all allegations seriously and reviewing past practices. An anonymous source told The Hollywood Reporter that multiple hidden recording devices had been found during the federal search of Diddy's properties. Meanwhile, in a private office at the courthouse, Sydney sat with victim advocates, her hands finally showing the tremor she had suppressed while testifying. I don't know if this will change anything, she told them, but at least now there's light where there was darkness, and that's a start. Back in the courtroom as proceedings continued, Diddy maintained his composure, but those seated closest to him noticed something different in his demeanor. The confident smile that had occasionally flashed during earlier testimonies was gone. Because Sydney Sweeney hadn't just exposed what happened in physical tunnels, she had exposed the passages of power and coercion that had been hidden in plain sight for decades. Disclaimer: the content above is entirely fictional and created for entertainment purposes only. No verified court evidence or official statements confirm these claims. This narrative is not based on any actual allegations involving Sydney Sweeney or Sean Diddy Combs.